listening to the Hell Horse Show podcast, your source for unscripted conversations about the latest topics in the Mustang performance space, including our own projects, products, and news. Hosted by the founder of Hell Horse Performance himself, Jeff Gray. Now, let's get started.
Thanks for joining us for episode 2 of the Hell Horse Show podcast. I'm Jeff Gray, once again joined by Sam Reeves. How you doing today, Sam?
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Welcome back. Hopefully this one goes a little bit better than our last one. Today's
my
topic,
microphone is fixed, so that is a bonus.
I did have to tell people, I'm like, it was picking up his laptop.
Yeah, I thought it was my AirPods.
Not sure why the audio cut off at the end, but we'll work through the problems. So we're episode 2 in the series. Topic we're going to talk about today, which is sort of unique, is sponsorships, how Hell Horse, especially myself since I run all that, handle sponsorships, what we look for, what the inside scoop is. I don't know if you've seen the tickets come in or pay attention to them. And I know you don't see them on social media where we get a billion questions a day about sponsorship. So this seems like a timeless topic to cover. And by no means, the disclaimer of this is by no means when we're talking about this, should anybody take this as the gospel. This is by no means how every other company operates. This is the standards by which we operate. There's a few other select companies that I won't mention that operate in the same genre. Following genre is the wrong term. They operate in the same parameters that I operate within that have given me feedback on sponsorships and opportunities. I know people are familiar with Alex Alvord, Xander 13. They're definitely familiar with Gavin. It's just a 6. I know you know both of those names. And then the big up-and-comer that we have coming up now is Jack Claiborne, who is determined veteran, prior service veteran, who all of his YouTube earnings actually get donated back to veteran charities. So that's a really cool thing. But
I did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah. But on the daily, there's, I know in the ticket system and the support emails and the general inquiries, especially on Instagram, there's a lot of, hey, how do I get a discount on this? Hey, how do I get sponsored? It's got to be super easy. Things like that. So I figured this would be a good topic for us to cover today. And when we get into this topic, there needs to be a couple of basic premises and understandings of where my thought process is, where I come from a business decision. Outside of everybody that I sponsor, I do have friendships with or work closely with or get along with. And I think people are actually shocked how much I talk to these guys, and whether it's Facebook groups we've created or text messages and phone calls, there's a lot of communication. But a lot of people, I think, fail to understand that sponsorship is not one way, or maybe they do think it's one way and they think 218 Instagram followers or 500 YouTube subscribers is enough to just get sponsorships. The thing with sponsorships with any business, but we'll keep it directed around Hell Horse, is it's a business to business relationship. That's how it is with any company, right? And the best examples I like to give people when I talk about it's got to be a win-win for everybody. There's 2 examples, and you can chime in on this, Sam, as I get going. But if you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s, like myself and you grew up in the era of Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls just dominating. That was your childhood. And Wheaties was a cereal back then that everybody wanted. Everybody wanted to collect the boxes, your favorite sports stars and everybody athlete-wise and was on Wheaties. I don't know if you remember that or not, Sam.
Yeah, I am a couple years younger than you, so I was not in that Wheaties area, and I think there are several Mustang owners who weren't either. But continue with your...
Yeah, that's where the second example come in. So the way you need to look at it is Wheaties was a smaller known brand looking for a big impact. So they contract the Michael Jordans, the Scottie Pippens, could be the Jeff Gordons. I don't know if Jeff Gordon ever did anything like that, but the superstars of the sporting industry to promote Wheaties. So Wheaties is paying them for their brand. Michael Jordan's brand is huge, and Wheaties wanted a piece of that and to use Michael Jordan's relevancy in the space to boost their brand. In a modern day comparison, so what I was saying is the Mixer platform is a large platform owned by Microsoft, but they're trying to attract customers through Ninja's platform. Now, with that being said, you've got to look at it from a business to business relationship. And the key, as you were hinting at, Sam, which I'm sure you want to allude to, is businesses are for profit. Every business I deal with or own has been a for-profit business. So it has to make business sense at the same time, whatever the relationship's going to be. So whether you're the big brand, small brand, or vice versa. It's got to make sense. So it's a numbers game. We're going to stay very top level in this conversation. But I think that's two great working examples depending on your age. The Wheaties and Michael Jordan and the sports stars of the 90s, or if you're more in current times, which I think everybody knows about, is streaming, online streaming in the gaming community. And if you're really intimate with that, you know about Ninja going to the Mixer platform. And that's a great example of maybe not sponsorships, but big brand, little brand working together so that everybody wins. It's not a, can I get a free windshield banner and a fuel system? How do I get a turbo kit? How do I get a Circle D converter? How do I get suspension parts? I mean, every company operates differently. That's why I kind of gave that disclaimer in the beginning. I know some guys that are sponsored, they get free suspension stuff because they've attracted so much business and they do so well for those brands. But obviously that is a case-by-case basis. And most people coming to us, at least here at Hellhorse, right, are obviously coming for boost and fuel systems and superchargers and things like that. They're not contacting me going, hey man, can I get some drag springs and some vertical links?
And in the motorsports world, it's interesting because every motorsport is different. So if you have drag guys versus road race guys versus drifters, there's definitely different sponsorship things that go along with that, because
it's got to be a good match for that brand. My brand is not a drifting brand. Hellhorse is not a drifting brand.
Well, maybe it could be, but as of now, no, it is not.
Yeah, it certainly could be, and that's something we'll be talking about drifting in episode 3 or 4 of this podcast. But it's one of those things where you have to know your brand, you have to know your audience, and know who you're attracting.
Absolutely.
But sponsorships is one of those things we always get asked about, especially on Instagram, and I figured it would be a good topic for us to kind of delve into and talk about a little bit.
And I want to reiterate something you said, which is where business is for profit. Businesses have to make money. We're not being greedy. We're just trying to make a living, right? So we can't give you things that cost. We can't lose money on things if there isn't, a positive for us.
Yeah, there has to be a value proposition on the other side. Like, hey, if I'm giving you X a part that costs $1,000, how many X parts that cost $1,000 are you going to be able to bring in the door? And if my margin for ease of math is 20%, it's going to take X amount of those just to break even on what I'm giving for you. So I'm not seeing a return until X amount of those. If the margin's 20% on $1,000 item, I need to sell 6 of them basically before I'm breaking even with my time investment. And then anything beyond that is a value add to the brand. And it's my job to retain those customers for other things. And I think people forget that. I think some
items, the margins are fairly low. Some are higher, right? So especially popular things, sometimes those have lower margins because you're trying to get more out the door. So it's harder to give discounts on certain things as well.
Right. And if it's not an in-house brand, if it's not something I'm building, marketing like our twin turbo kit, I'm not saying the margin on that's great, but I'm at the mercy of another vendor, whoever the parent company is that's making that product. And then the price that's also set by the competition in the marketplace drives profit down. I'm very open with customers. A great example of that is like if you look at the Paxton specials, which are notorious and well known, and I've sold hundreds of, and other people in the marketplace have sold hundreds. After credit card fees and free shipping, that bundle nets me about $102 in profit. So somebody's spending $6,300 and I'm making $100. I'm very open about that with customers, and it's okay to throw that in the podcast. But when you think about the fact that that's making me $103, $102, let's call it $100 for round of math, you would have to be able to sell 62 of those, 63, I guess, or more. But for the sake of argument, you'd have to sell 62 of those just for me to break even. Like, the value proposition in motorsports is definitely tougher. We're not selling jewelry. We're not selling furniture where it's like, oh yeah, your wife's or girlfriend's ring, it's got 800% markup. That couch you want to buy costs $50. We're selling it for $500. Sure, you can have it for free. Bring a couple people in.
And some manufacturers also require to have a minimum list price. So you might be able to offer discounts after that, but a lot of times, it's the price the manufacturer wants you to sell it for, and you can't list it lower than that.
Correct. So, on that topic, sponsorships isn't all about free. We talked about that a minute ago. Usually the way it works is if you're bringing value to the brand and there's a relationship that makes sense, there's obviously agreements or handshakes and paperwork involved, typically speaking. Sponsorships might require you to pay. We sponsor somebody right now that people are like, oh, life is easy when you're given a $15,000 motor for free. little do people realize he actually paid for that motor. I've got people that we sponsor and deal with that pay cost on items because the value proposition is they're good for the brand, but it's not to the point of being free. And I think that's something people confuse a lot with sponsorship too. Sponsorship does not mean free. Maybe it used to. I don't know. I never sought out sponsorships in anything I've done in life. But the value proposition has to be there. And if it's kind of a wash proposition where maybe it's worth a risk on a business end, you might be paying cost or a couple bucks above cost and hoping to ramp that relationship as your personal brand grows to where everything's free. But I definitely would say one of the biggest misunderstandings is everybody thinks stuff is free. And it's just not. So that's one of those interesting kickers too that people need to understand is on top of being a business to business relationship, you're going to be paying for something. And even if you're not paying for the product, there's going to be an expectation of what's going to be delivered in return for that relationship to continue or grow. It's not going to be like, oh, you need 2 or 3 years to be able to show me value. I don't care if it's the Euro taillights when we're talking about it. I don't care if it's people wanting a t-shirt and a sticker, things like that to go with it. And like, oh man, I go to so many Cars and Coffees events. That's great. Well, everybody goes to Cars and Coffee events. The question is, what are you doing, not just for yourself, but for my brand that you're worthy of consideration, if that makes any sort of sense in that front.
Makes sense to me.
So that's always one of those interesting things. When it comes to the advice of what should you do to get sponsored, you need to be able to show a business what the value proposition is for you being involved. It's no different than anything else in life. If you want X, you need to show me how you're going to get me Y and how it's going to work and the size. And that's a good tie into the like YouTubers of the world. Across the industry and in every genre, there's, I'm going to call it tiers. Like if you have X amount of subscribers and X amount of viewers, typically it qualifies you for X amount free or certain goods for free. Or if you're Cletus McFarland level, I don't know what his sponsorships look like. Everything might be free. Where if you're at a lower tier, you might be paying for some stuff. Maybe some injectors are free. Maybe oil pump gears are free. And you're paying a little bit for everything else. It's not a cut and dry system. There are people out there that have the sub count that is kind of considered the peak of where stuff start quote unquote becoming free, but maybe their viewership is at a level of somebody a fifth of their size. So too many people look at it and go, oh, I've got X amounts of subscribers, I should be able to hit a home run with this. Or I did one video that did 33,000 views based around the S550, and we should do something with the S550 marketplace. That really doesn't determine everything. It's the big overall picture. It's not just sub counts. It's not just Instagram followers. I'm very adamant in telling people, I don't care if I have 200,000 Instagram followers on Instagram for the business, or if I have 20. What I care about is how many of those people are actually engaged with the brand, own pieces from the brand, or have a relationship with the brand where they're telling other people about the brand from what's being posted. If I've got 2 million Instagram followers and only 200 of them are benefiting my brand, then all I'm caring about is the number. I'd rather have a truer, more authentic audience that's good for the brand. And that's the other piece that you have to kind of get through when it comes to sponsorship is when you're talking to us or any other company, you have to be able to show how your audience is valid. And it's not just a whole bunch of people following you because you got a really cool wrap or really cool wheels, or you're the first person to, put an 18 front end on a GT350 or vice versa. You really have to be able to show that your audience is engaged with what's going on. And
that's something that's been fun to watch as Hellhorse has grown, is to see orders come in with coupon codes from different sponsored, like Gavin, for example. It is fun to see that direct relationship, how people see our product that we've either given to him or given him as a discount and put it in his car, and then I've purchased the same product and hopefully been very satisfied.
Yeah, you could even go lower product than that. Doug or somebody mentioned the vinyl peelback sticker on the 4-post, or I'm sorry, not the 4-post, their 2-post lift from the GT350 was on it in a YouTube video in passing. I had to go find it. And sure enough, that night and the next night, I think I hand addressed 100 envelopes just for stickers.
Oh yeah, I remember that. That was that was something else.
It was something else, and that was super crazy. Same thing with the radios. Exactly right. Gavin, for those of you who don't know who Gavin is by his first name, it's Just a Six on YouTube. I consider him a really good friend at the same time. You know, he did that sync 8-inch swap from base to 8-inch. And he'd had that for a while. I think we shipped that to him a while ago. He paid for it even. Again, going back to sometimes you have to pay for stuff. It's not all given, no matter what the comments say. That triggered a whole lot of radio orders because he did an awesome job showing the installation process. There was a huge benefit to that because that really is the first point of view video showing what that installation process looks like and how OEM it is at the end of the day. We can sit there and say it's OEM product all day, but until you physically see it in that nature, you know, it's the way it works. It's kind of like, I think his name's Brandon. Man, he's going to kill me if he hears this. Brandon, Derek Barron Productions buddy with the S550. I put his video on the homepage, Derek's video on the homepage of the Digital Dash. That's really the first video I've seen on YouTube that shows off the Digital Dash. Yeah, it's a little clickbaity. Yeah, it's a little Instagram hyped up, but neither of them have any involvement with the brand. It was just the first genuine video. And that led to a whole bunch of people inquiring or ordering Digital Dashes just from having seen a video that was genuine and authentic. So it's interesting how that works too.
While we're talking about the Dash again, I've been having a lot of questions about, is the price going to change? Is it going to go up? Is it going to go down? And I thought we might just address that real quick because I've heard we might be throwing out a couple coupons in the coming weeks.
Yeah, there should be a couple coupons dropping out in a couple of weeks on the Digital Dashes. They'll be limited to 2 or 3 uses a week. It'll kind of be a first come, first serve basis. That'll be on Instagram. So again, going back to Instagram engagement, you better be on the Instagram because when that coupon drops on the story, it's going to be first come, first serve. And we definitely go through those things.
And the reason for the coupon is not because we're trying to, you know, be cheap. It's actually because parts are just slow to get and we don't really want to commit to what we've had happen with the 4 to 8 inch kits where then we get out to 2 months to ship. So we're trying to just...
Well, and on the coupon front too, like we talked about going into 2020, the vendor in which we acquire dashes from, Ford's vendor, who we acquire dashes from, there's no guarantee that those are going to be able to come in. So the price increase happened in 2020. And we promoted that since I think October in regards to, hey, look, if we can offer it again when it lowers in price, we're going to lower it in price. We're not being greedy on the dashes. So, you know, if we can save you a couple bucks, we will. And, you know, for the most part, we're still having to pay the core charge and everything else.
Yeah,
so
our bottom line stays the same.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of parts cost.
Right. So as we can get a couple of those pieces floating in sporadically through this year that can lower the cost, the coupon code will compensate that. And if I dump on Instagram stories, we're kind of getting off track. But if I dump a coupon code in Instagram stories for 3 pieces, it's because we have 3 coming that aren't going to require the core fee to save people some money. So yeah, that'll be coming soon as well. But I mean, that is a good deviation from talking about Gavin and that 4 to 8 inch kit. So much so that he also wants to try to put a digital dash in the GT350, and we might try that.
Which we talked about extensively last podcast, but we're still working on it.
Correct. And I think that's a good place to turn the conversation on, you know, what should I be doing to get attention from Hellhorse for sponsorship or from other brands? And maybe we talked about this a little bit ago, but really there's a few key things. You need to have an audience that's engaged in what your sponsorship request, the company you're asking for sponsorship from reflects. So great example that you gave earlier. If you're a drifter, I'm probably not the company to ask for. If you're into stance life, I'm not the company to ask for that. You need to make sure that you're targeting who needs to be targeted. So the first thing is make sure you're pitching the right company. The second thing I would tell you is just dropping messages into people's DMs is not going to get you the attention that you want.
How many Instagram messages do you get per day?
I probably get 20 or 30 messages a day about, can you sponsor me, or are you sponsoring anybody right now? Plus any other messages, plus the messages on my personal Facebook page, plus the emails that we get. And that's just not the right way to go around it. If you're really looking for a company to invest in you, if you're going to your dream job interview, would you just dump off a voicemail that says, hey, you should sponsor me, and leave it at that.
I mean, send them an Instagram message, Facebook message.
Right. I mean, you need to send an email. You need to basically have a business plan. Like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm looking to do. How can we work together? This is what I bring to the table. This is what I've had success with before. You need to have a business plan. When I said earlier, this is a business to business relationship, it really is. It needs to be win-win. You need to be able to show what you're bringing to the table. So my first piece of advice would be, don't send companies direct messages on Instagram with short sentences that say, hey, you should sponsor me. Because here's the thing, 90% of those I'm deleting straight up. I'm going to be honest with you. I delete them. I might click on your profile and get a really good laugh because you have 216 Instagram followers and your pictures are of everything from you playing beer pong to 3 pictures of your car at the car wash using the scrubby wand that you shouldn't be using at the spray wash. You're not bringing any value. Or I'll get those same messages and I'll go to their Instagram or Facebook page and they're bashing the shit out of companies. Just as much as consumers talk on the front end, like Mustang 6G, Facebook groups, amongst themselves, cars and coffee groups, car clubs, the NSFRs of the world, the Northside Fun Runs, the guys up here that, cause all the shenanigans on the road here, as much as they talk, vendors talk on the backside. I don't think they realize that initially, that like, if somebody's brought up and I ask another vendor about like, hey, this person's looking for a sponsorship, what do you think? I'm going to get an honest answer if they've had any interaction or heard any interaction. So, make sure you know what you're asking for and where you're coming from, because for us, it's a financial investment that needs to be a partnership. So
I think you put it a good way. Treat it like a job application almost. What's on your social media matters. I mean, you're going to be a public face for the company in a way.
Right. Your ethics, integrity, your ideals, your life ethos needs to line up with the way the brand lines up, or it's just not going to work. So for me, if you can't be authentic and have integrity and ethics, I don't want anything to do with you and you represent my brand, because you can just as quickly cause damage to my brand as I can. So that's kind of the second piece of advice. Don't have Instagram feeds and Facebook feeds after seeing those direct messages thinking that you might get a reply. And when I have a moment, I look at them where you're just bashing the shit out of somebody else or another car guy, or you're doing a disservice to this industry and the car culture as a whole. If you're toxic, I guess that's the best way to put it. If you're toxic, I want nothing to do with you. And the third, a good third point in that is, since it's a business relationship, one of the best things you can do if you're not sure how to put together like a simple business plan in an email or who to talk to about it is draw attention to yourself. Put up a YouTube video, put an Instagram video up, put a poll up, tag us in something, whether it's us or another company, that shows that your audience and yourself are invested in trying to make something work with that brand. A little sweat equity to show what is the value there. If you leave it to us having to evaluate the numbers or ask about you and things like that, it may not go the way you want it to go to. And the fourth thing is, coming into it, you need to understand you're probably going to be paying some sort of bill. At some point in the relationship, you're going to be paying a bill.
And I think a lot of people know that. I think a lot of people understand sometimes it might just be 15% off on most things, or a discount on specifically what you're looking for, right? Or cost, right?
But what I mean by that is, like, if you blow up your motor from whatever we choose to do together out of stupidity, or you blow up your transmission out of stupidity from not listening to the advice given to you, I'm not here to put your car back together.
Just happens.
Or shit just happens. I'm not here to put your car back together. You better have some way of putting your car back together, because
that's just how modifying cars go. We all know this.
Right. Don't have $3 in the bank account. And, when your shit blows up and your business plan with that sponsor goes to hell, don't think they're going to keep you onboarded.
Don't be putting a new motor on a firm. Whatever you got to do, you just got to make sure, or if those things happen, make sure you're having a conversation with a sponsor about like, hey, I'm going to have some downtime. I've got to be able to pay for this or that. Do you know of anybody else we can work with? I'm very clear with like Jack and Gavin and Alex. They have great relationships now with Randy and Fuel Injector Clinic. I can get them injectors. They get their injectors for free or low cost, as long as it's making sense for
FIC is a brand, but there's a lot of trust in that too. Again, vendor to vendor, make sure you're having an open communication like, hey, I'm going to be down for this long, or don't just think like, hey, I've got $3 in the bank account. I can hoonigan the shit out of this car. And when it blows up, somebody's just going to give me more stuff for free.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. It's again, that business to business relationship where it needs to make sense for both parties. It's not my responsibility as a business to financially audit you to make sure that when you're being a hoonigan, you can or can't afford to pay to fix your car. There's going to be an expectation of what you're supposed to do year to year with the product you're getting, or how long you're supposed to be maintaining the product. And if you're not featuring the product because you're down, that's not going to make a sponsor very happy. So just make sure you go in with a plan for like, hey, if something happens, how am I going to cover this? Or am I working with somebody that might be able to help me get back on the road a little bit faster? Like Gavin needed Gen 2 heads for a project I can't really talk about at this point from when we're going to air this podcast versus his own video, but he needed some Gen 2 heads. He made a post about it, couldn't find them. I went out of my way to find Gen 2 heads for this project, and he's paying for the heads. He's a huge channel and he's still paying for the heads because it just doesn't fall in line with what we're doing, because we're doing something a little different with a black car on his channel. And you just got to be prepared for those twists and turns and holding up your end of the bargain. It's not going to be up to your sponsor to fix your car in a roundabout way is what I'm saying. Were you going to say something? I feel like I was about to cut you off.
I was not. I was just going to see what left you have on sponsorships. I have a few questions people have been asking me I want you to address, and then I just had one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that would be the best way to round it up, is treat it like a business-to-business relationship. If you're going to approach it as if you're going to go for a job. Don't just be sending DMs on Instagram and thinking that that's going to get it done. And make sure that the value that value proposition you're putting out is going to make sense. I don't care if you have 200 YouTube subscribers or 200 Instagram followers, or you have 2 million. Every relationship is going to be unique and a little bit different because everybody brings something a little bit different to the marketplace. Jack's a great example of that. I love working with Jack because everything he's doing, Determined Veteran, is going to veteran charities. And that has a special place in my heart for the work he's doing. So I will absolutely do whatever I can to help him out to get to where he's trying to be able to benefit those charities the best he can. And now we're twin turboing his GT350R. But again, it was the same type of conversation. Like, where are you at? What are you trying to do? How do you fit into my brand? And how do we make this work? And that's the kicker too that people need to understand is whatever you're doing with that sponsor doesn't mean it's going to change. If you have 200 YouTube subscribers, since YouTube's so big, it doesn't mean that that's going to be the same deal when you hit 1 million or 500,000 or 300,000. That deal is going to mold and take shape as that relationship grows and your brand grows and pushes more towards your sponsor. They're going to do more and more for you, and things are going to become more and more unique based on your situation. You can let me know if you think I missed something or if that's
I don't think you missed anything. I just want to say, don't let any of this discourage you if you are that 200 follower thing. It doesn't hurt to ask if you have, a compelling
just do it in the right way.
Reason. Do it in the right way. Do it in the right channels.
Absolutely not.
That leads
if you're trying to get sponsorship, again, it goes back to my statement of, I don't care if you have 2 million followers or 20 followers. I care about the how authentic your brand is and who is following your brand. If you have a car page and all that follows you is a whole bunch of models that want to model, that's not who I'm trying to target. So your brand needs to fall in line with what you're trying to do. And the more authentic your brand is, and the more authentic your audience is to your brand that's engaged in your brand, it doesn't matter what the size is, the conversation becomes easier. Because if you have 2 million, like I said, 2 million models following your Instagram page, you're like, well, I got 2 million followers. That does me no good, because when I go to audit your social media, I'm not targeting them. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. That brings me to just a slightly on/off topic point. Hellhorse is Jeff and then somewhat me. Yeah. So there's no dedicated social media person who's just literally posting and replying to people. It's the two of us. So Jeff really handles everything social media, and he's busy all day long. I can handle most of the questions related to electronics and all that, get coming via email. Emails right now the best way to contact us and get actually fairly prompt response, though. It's just there's two of us. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of people talking to us as we've grown in the past 2 years. It's honestly been incredible. So just something to remember, be patient with us. Though with the new ticketing system, we have been a lot better about
being able to keep track. It goes back to the last episode where I was like,
not missing.
It's calling me at 9 a.m. And it's an honest mistake. I'm not remembering who they are at 7 p.m. by the time I sit back down dealing with the day stuff. So yeah, the ticketing system's great. But yeah, I mean, social media is all me. So when you send a DM looking for sponsorship, I'm the one reading it. Like the guy that would make the decision is who you're DMing. Just kind of keep that in mind too, as a side note. Well, what questions are you getting a lot?
Just,
you should answer at the end
two little or three little things. One, Eurotail lights has been super hot. People are asking me, how long do they take to come in? When do they ship? Why don't I get tracking right away? Just thought some easy to address things there.
Yeah, so typically they're getting shipped out in bulk. Whether I'm, when they're getting shipped out, they're getting shipped out in bulk. I think every day. What have I been averaging? We've been shipping probably 6 pairs a day, probably on average for a week. If you don't get tracking, send an email back. If it doesn't get pasted into your Shopify email that shows up, typically those orders are processed. It says a week lead time on the website. I think I've been pretty good about getting them processed in 2 or 3 days. And they're only taking 2 or 3 days by FedEx to get to their destination. So
they're just really popular. They're hard to keep in stock.
Well, and you got to remember coronavirus affects that too. They're a third party. They're not Ford OEM. And that's kind of been the holdup on a lot of stuff is with coronavirus in China, they shut down manufacturing for more than just the Chinese New Year. And they're still slow to let people in. And the problem is supply and demand. So, the supply that was here in the States was only meant to get them through Chinese New Year, like when we get resupplied out of LA instead of China. And when that supply ran dry, we're stuck waiting. And luckily that's kind of getting streamlined and worked back out. But that did cause a couple of delays in there. It's just honestly coronavirus. Not that I want to talk about it, but and the overhyping and sensation, oversensitized, whatever it is. Too much overreaction.
The second lead time question is on the ported 18 manifolds.
Okay.
Just where's the lead time at on those?
I think right now we're at 2.5.
They ship like immediately.
Yeah, I think we have those listed at a 2 to 3 week lead time. I think Anthony right now is running about a 2.5 week lead time.
Because those are also really popular. We can't keep them in stock, so
can't keep those in stock. I think so everybody knows where Anthony is located is in Baytown. I'm in North Houston. The business is in North Houston. He's in Baytown down by the drag strip. It's about an hour and a half away. We used to rendezvous. Literally, we would rendezvous in a parking lot at the very beginning of doing this, and he would take 20 or 30 or 40 manifolds at a time for me and port them and get them done. We run about a 2 to 3 week lead time right now. I want to say it's closer to 2, but we've moved away from that meetup system. It's just not efficient for anybody. And now all the manifolds that come to us, we end up just forwarding straight onto him. So if he's out of manifolds, he's not out of manifolds more than what's our typical shipping time to him? 2 days, 3 days, probably.
3 days.
I would say right now he's probably running a 2 week lead time as it's going into race season. But I think we have it listed as 2 to 3 weeks, but I think it's closer to 2 weeks right now.
Great. Okay, last question. This is one I get fairly often is, do we offer a military discount?
Yes, we do offer a military discount. That's a great question. Unlike a lot of businesses that can flat rate it, some products have a lot of margin. Some products have no margins. We talked about that earlier with like packs and kits. Best thing to do is send an email to support@hellhorseperformance.com. Let us know what you're looking at, and we'll give you the biggest discount we possibly can on that. For military members, I'm going to ask that you have to prove that you're prior service, current service, or prior current first responder, because it's not just military, it's also first responder discounts, EMS, LEO, military, things like that. You just can't call me and be like, oh yeah, I need a military discount. It doesn't work like that. And anybody in any of those positions looking for an LEO or military discount knows what I'm talking about. So we do offer it. It's going to be, I don't want to say it's a case-by-case basis. It's more of a product-by-product basis because some things don't have the margin in it to where I can give as much as I want. So it's best just to ask.
Well, that sums up what I had, and I think you hit the nail on the head with the sponsorship questions. But of course, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to send them in.
Yeah, best way to reach us again is support@hellhorseperformance.com. Contact form on the website at hellhorseperformance.com. Business phone number is 832-791-2993. You can call, you can text, you can reach us on social. But again, I'll say it again, as we did in the last podcast, with the dozens and dozens of messages that come in every day. I can't guarantee you're going to get a response on Instagram. I don't treat Instagram and Facebook Messenger as a official business communication source. It's more of a luxury. You need to email, you need to call, you need a text message to make sure you're staying on our radar. And I think that's about it, unless you got some other questions to kick in, or did I miss anything on that sponsorship conversation we wanted to have?
I don't think so.
Kind of covered it in the best limelight possible.
I think we're all set.
Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be dropping episode 3 later next week. I think we're actually talking about doing a drifting episode. Is that what we're talking about? I don't know shit about drifting, so
I know you don't. I have a buddy who drifts an S197. I guess a 13 GT. Just a little background. Him and I work on a pit crew for a Pro 2 drifter, the only one based out of St. Louis. So if anybody listening knows anything about drifting, which is possible, we're really active in that and active with the big guys. Adam LZ, for example, spent a bunch of time with him here in St. Louis and Orlando and all over the country. So it's just an interesting topic, and I think it's something you'd like to learn about and some other people like to learn about as the brand expands and maybe goes that direction some, because it seems to be getting a lot more popular as the years have gone on, as Formula Drift has grown and just boomed in the past 3 years or so.
I can definitely tell you my only experience with drifting is when I used to own two. I had 2 different 240 SXs. One was SR20 swapped, one was RB25 swapped, but I didn't.
Well, there you go.
I was just, I was doing that in the days when it was still stupid expensive to do it. If you remember those days.
Still stupid expensive to do it.
Well, the cars are getting more expensive. The more people wreck those 240s, I can't believe how expensive they are. It's one of those statements like you hear old guys saying, where I wish I would have parked a few in the garage and just sat on them, because it's absolutely ridiculous how
I actually have a buddy who just sold one for like $5,000. It was immaculate, but it was an auto. Never drifted, but it was, and then he bought a Chevy Trax. Like, what the hell?
Well, you can go either way, I guess. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there, man. I appreciate your time as always. And I think that's going to be what episode 3 is I'm not going to talk about it. I don't know shit about it, but I can definitely ask all the stupid questions about drifting, and we'll see how that goes, because I think that.
And we'll look at the performance aspect of it, and suspension and like the technical things with car setup, and what actually matters to us as a performance part supplier, right?
Yeah, I'd be curious to know if there's a big enough market for that we need to start carrying more drift parts. I really don't know, and maybe people.
Well, you'd be surprised, because there's really not that many drift specific parts. A lot of it is carryover.
Don't you need angle kits and oil?
Yeah, angle kits. But honestly, there's. We'll talk about it.
Well, we'll leave it there. If anybody's got any questions, again, shoot us an email, hit us up on Instagram, give us a call. As always, we're always looking for people to work with. Don't let it discourage you. Just figured we drop some knowledge bombs from my aspect of what we're looking for on a very top level. I don't want to dig too deep into sponsorships and things like that, because every company works so differently. And hopefully that helps some people out.
Thanks,
all right,
Jeff.
buddy. Well, I appreciate it as always, and we'll catch you on the next episode.